Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, I wanted to start today's show with an apology for our last show where Tony decided that it was his choice to leave you on a down note with the last game we talked about was 2005 Texas. Go back, check the tape. Who was it that suggests ending the show there? It's not me, friends. Friends, I would never do that to you. It was Tony Gerdeman. So send all your complaints to @Tony Gerdeman on Twitter for, I don't want to say being a hater, but Tony, how would you describe yourself?
Awesome.
That's not the word I was looking for, but okay.
Tom, why would you tell people to complain about the last show on this current show? You should have said that on the last show. That show is now over and done with. All of the complaining has been done. Now we move on, Tom. We're not here to talk about the past. Although,
that's literally the topic of today's show, but yes, go on.
having that loss in the top six, just, if people have an issue with that, I would have no problems with them reaching out to you. Not in a Juwan Howard way, but maybe in a Greg Gard way. Just, whoa, let's talk this out. Let's be peaceable. Let's be friends about this. And then whether they want to take a swing at you, that's up to them.
It always is. Yeah, this is our top 5 show, except as we've been going through this list, we've been going through here and it's like I keep adding games because it's like, well, I can't leave that one off here. So this is the top 5 asterisk. And the asterisk is actually 7. But yeah, we've got 7 games to talk about here, and they're all pretty memorable, all pretty exciting. I think you'll enjoy most of them. So you want to get started?
Yes, Tom. Please, let's get started. And the first one, I think people will agree with.
Yeah, this is the 2002 Ohio State-Michigan game, which you probably remember. You probably remember about 3 plays from this game. You might remember the first touchdown by Maurice Clarett. You remember 4 because you remember the wheel route to Maurice Clarett to set up the second touchdown. They score they go ahead touchdown with 4:55 left, and you remember Will Allen intercepting the ball in the end zone. That's what you remember because that's what I remembered. I haven't gone back and watched this game in probably 15 years. You go through this box score, it was like, what? What? Michigan had double the first downs that Ohio State had, 26 first downs to 13 first downs. Michigan ran 87 plays on offense. 87 plays on offense. Ohio State ran 48. They ran almost double the number of plays that Ohio State ran. Here are Michigan's first 3 drives of the game. Friends, tell me if you think you might agree with me that it's important to not kick field goals. Here's Michigan's first 3 drives of the game. 12 for 41, field goal. 16 plays, 62 yards, field goal. 19 plays, 88 yards, field goal. Those were Michigan's only 3 drives of the entire first half. Michigan had the ball 3 times in the first half. They kicked 3 field goals. They had, let's do some quick math, 28, 47. Michigan ran 47 plays in the first half. Ohio State ran 48 plays for the entire game. And they were only up 9-7 at halftime. And and then after halftime, they just completely lost the plot. 6 plays, 22 yards, 5 plays, 14 yards, 7 plays, 28 yards, 6 plays, 11 yards, 10 plays, 44 yards, 11 plays, 56 yards. They never got the ball back into the red zone after that first half. All 3 first half drives ended in the red zone. They never got back to the red zone after that. They played in Ohio State's. Every Michigan drive ended basically at midfield. There was one drive that ended at Michigan 49. Every other drive ended in Ohio State territory except for one. There's one in the fourth quarter that ended at the Michigan 28. They spent the entire day going up and down the field in Ohio State and just didn't score a touchdown. This is like the inverse of the 1996 Ohio State-Michigan game where Ohio State was like controlled the first half, but it was only 9-3, 9-6 at half, something like that. And then, the Ty Streets play and then they lose. This was the opposite of that. And, game ends down at the goal line with another Will Allen interception, as we said last game. When in doubt, if you're not sure who saved the day for Ohio State back in those days, just assume it's Will Allen and you're almost always right.
Watching this game, watching Michigan kick field goal after field goal, I immediately went back to that 96 game, and I didn't feel like things were out of hand. It's like, well, if you want to keep kicking those field goals, and that third field goal came from the Ohio State 4-yard line. That's where Michigan was when Lloyd Carr decided to kick. So that drive was 19 plays. Ohio State in the first half, 18 plays. One of those was the kneel down at the end of the half. Then another crazy one here for you, Tom. And you look at these stats, you're like, how did Michigan lose? Michigan 12 of 22 third down conversions. Ohio State 1 of 8. That's crazy to me. And 26 first downs to 13 for Ohio State. But Michigan rushed for 121 yards. Ohio State held them to 3 yards a carry. They threw the ball a bunch, but they were under 50% completion. Michigan was, and I guess it's the bend but don't break thing. And as long as you're just going to keep forcing field goals, you don't have to score too many. And then, that wheel route will live forever. I think, as we all know, like Maurice Clarett suggested it. They went to it. It worked. Probably should have been 6, but it eventually worked out. And then to call the pitch play, the option play to Mo Hall, nobody really expecting that one. Not the prettiest game, but it was a game that it's Ohio State, Michigan. It's number 9 versus number 2. Any play, because this was how it was back in, especially 2002. Any play could be the game winner or game loser. So even though there's not a lot of action, it's like you're watching a no-hitter. Like every pitch, there's a lot of drama there, and that's how much of the 2002 season was. When there was equal talent on both sides. Not the 2002 Purdue-Ohio State game. That was just Ohio State playing down to the level, I think. But this was one where a play could happen at any moment to turn the entire game around. So that made things intense the entire way.
Yeah, that's another one where we talked on the last show about like the 2017 Ohio State Penn State game. Just the tension in the stadium. The tension in the stadium on this day was just incredible. That was about as just everyone was just living and dying with every play, because it's if there's no Big Ten championship game. So if they win this game, they're playing Miami for the national championship. If they lose this game, their season is their season's shot. Michigan wins the Big Ten on a tiebreaker because they're both 7-1 in the league. I mean, this was, and actually, Iowa probably would have won. Iowa would have won the Big Ten because Iowa was undefeated in the league that year. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, this is the matter. This is you're playing for the Big Ten championship. You're playing for your spot in the national championship game. You're playing for the Michigan game. This was, and Ohio State had pulled off that miraculous win in Ann Arbor the year before that. So this was a chance to kind of validate, like, okay, that wasn't just a weird one-off fluke. And, for the second year in a row, the game ends with John Navarre throwing an interception to an Ohio State defensive back. So it was pretty tense. This is again, like you said, not a great game, but a very, very tense and very memorable game. So next one, another one that this is one Tony insisted I ended the show with this one, but I said, no, Tony, we're not doing that to our friends again. The 2019 Fiesta Bowl, and I'm sorry, I know this is a fairly fresh wound, but this was one heck of a football game. This was very much the 2005 Texas game, but at the end of the season with do or die stakes. It was two legitimately great football teams just going head to head. Ohio State kicking too many field goals early in the game, and that ended up coming back to bite them. Completely dominated the first half, at 16-0. But it's only 16-0. And then Clemson scores 2 touchdowns in the last 3 minutes, and all of a sudden it's 16-14 going into the half. And then Clemson scores another touchdown. It's 21-16 Clemson after 3 quarters. And it's like, how did Ohio State waste this? They completely dominated the game, but they just kept kicking field goals. And, and then, you had the drama of the maybe worst replay call in the history of college football happening later in the game. You had the teams, trading drives right at the end where Clemson goes down the field and scores the go-ahead touchdown with 1:49 left, and Ohio State going all the way down the field and throwing the ball into the end zone at the end of the game. I mean, this was, I think I've said this on some of the shows sort of late last season. I think either of these teams would have won the national championship comfortably in 2021. These were two incredibly good teams, and they had the misfortune of having to play each other in the semis. And then someone else had to play, Clemson ended up having to play another incredibly good team in that LSU team. I think any of those 3 teams win the national championship in 2021. That's how good they were. They just were all playing on the same team, or on the same season, so someone had to lose. But Yeah, this is one that, like, after this game, I think a lot of Ohio State fans were catatonic. That was just like, I remember looking at you and going, that was a heck of a football game. That was a really, really good football game.
Yeah, it was an incredible game. And despite that terrible replay call that cost them the game, I think they probably can overcome that if J.K. Dobbins is healthy the entire time. Because he disappeared for, I don't know, like a quarter or so with the ankle injury, and came back and wasn't healthy, but was still making plays. And really, if they only had, he has 18 carries for 174 yards. If he's got 25, 28 carries in this game, I think Ohio State finds a way to win it. And this one, Trevor Lawrence rushes for 107 yards with the 67-yarder, running away from Baron Browning. The Etienne catches, and just they did a good job putting Ohio State's defense in bad spots. This one should have been an Ohio State win, and I do wonder, Tom, if this is an Ohio State win, where is it still number 4? Does it move up because of the playoff implications? Does it move up to 1.5, 3.8? You've got some crazy numbers here.
It's probably a couple spots higher. Because in order for it to be a win, I mean, assuming they don't overturn the Jordan Fuller fumble recovery for a touchdown, assuming the game plays out as it did, and Justin Fields hits Chris Olave for a touchdown in the in the final 30 seconds, then it is. I mean, then this is like the Rose Bowl, the 2022 Rose Bowl, except with much higher stakes. So yeah, then it probably does go a couple slots higher, not because Ohio State won, but just because you would have that one extra little bump there. Yeah, but I mean, this had just about everything you could possibly want. And when we talk about Ohio State, when I tell you Ohio State needs to stop kicking field goals in the red zone, first half drives ended at the Clemson 4 field goal. Then they scored a touchdown. Had one drive that didn't go anywhere. Clemson 5, field goal. Clemson 16, field goal. You're in the red zone 4 times. You get 16 points out of it. That's not good enough to win. That's just... And then you had the late drive where, right after they scored a touchdown, they get the ball back. With 9:59 left, they go 10 plays, 50 yards, run 6:52 off the clock, end the drive at the Clemson 39, and they punt it. And that was one where it was like, I mean, I kind of understood it at the time, but man, you had an opportunity to really step on their necks, and you punted it, and Clemson almost. That was the one where Clemson muffed the punt, and it was there were like 10 times. There were probably 10 different plays that were like, if they just fall on that ball, if J.K. Dobbins can handle the ball, on that swing pass where he probably scores a touchdown. There's so many plays. If J.K. Dobbins doesn't get hurt, there's so many plays just here or there. Where just like one, all 10 things had to go Clemson's way, and they all went Clemson's way. So yeah, it was a great football game. It was a really, really, really exciting football game all the way through. You think about how often those playoff semifinal games are just kind of garbage that are over in the middle of the second quarter. This is one of the very few that has just delivered from start to finish. Fantastic game. Tony, I won't apologize for having it this high on the list. I'm sorry. I don't care what you say.
I left this game feeling like Ohio State was the considerably better team. And it was plays that, it could have been much worse, obviously, for Clemson. I think they were fortunate to come through with this one. Then you saw next year the talent discrepancy, I think.
Yeah. I think you saw when those 10 things don't go right for Clemson, that's what that looked like the next year. So, and that set up the drama of this game, helped set up the next year's game. That Sugar Bowl win against Clemson, Ohio State fans probably don't enjoy it as much if you don't have what happened the previous year in Glendale. So, this is it all worked out fine for Ohio State in the end. So, next one. This is one that I didn't have on my list because, if you look at the criteria, purely based on the criteria of the list, exciting football games, it doesn't really meet it because this game was over 20 minutes into the game, completely dead over. But there's some context here that really, as we were kind of going through this, I thought, I probably need to include this because given the context of how it happened and, the importance of the score not just being a win, but a significant win, I had to throw it back in here. 2014 Big Ten championship game. I remember before this game, I tweeted, I don't know what's going to happen. I have no idea what's going to happen. The only outcome that would completely shock me is a blowout Ohio State win. Anything else is completely within reason, because it was like you had the broken ankle for JT Barrett, so you've got a new quarterback you've not really seen before. Cardale Jones at that point was just the guy with the one bad tweet, and that was it. You really didn't know anything about Cardale Jones. He comes in, you had the Costa Cara George, the tragedy that happened that week. I mean, there's so much around this game, and Ohio State comes in. They were sixth in the poll, right? Sixth in the rankings, so, yeah. I believe. Yeah, sixth behind TCU and Baylor. TCU beat Iowa State 52-3 or something. It's like, well, how are they going to possibly jump them? And then Baylor also won. It's like, well, okay. So they would need a miracle. They would need to have the most impressive, shocking performance in Ohio State history to even have a chance to make the college football playoff, to even have a conversation about it. And then by halftime of this game, it was like, oh man, they're going to be in. Like, they're already in. Like, TCU and Baylor are already dead. Like, this is the most surprised I've ever been watching an Ohio State football game, bar none. I mean, they've lost some games they shouldn't have lost. But this was a game where it was like, you went in and it was like, if Cardale Jones had thrown 3 first-half interceptions and they lose this game 24-13, that would not have been at all a surprise, because you hadn't seen anything from Cardale Jones. You didn't know. I mean, you had the emotions of the week. You had no idea. And instead the game starts and it's just 4 hours of murder, just straight murder. And the play that I will always remember is right before halftime, Joey Bosa, everything has gone right for Ohio State. It's 31-0. It's like, how could this possibly get any better for Ohio State? And then Melvin Gordon fumbles. Joey Bosa picks it up, runs it into the end zone. And I forget who it was. Someone on Twitter that night said, like, this game has just gone to plaid. Like, the Spaceballs line, like, it was just like, you have left the realm of reality at that point. And, and then the fourth, they really didn't run it up. It was 38-0 at halftime, and they scored 4 more touchdowns. But, the 2 touchdowns at the end were the backup running back scoring. So they had 1 more touchdown in the second half to make it 45-0. And they just tacked on a couple garbage kind of touchdowns at the end. But this is, like I said, legitimately the most shocked I've been watching an Ohio State football game.
Yeah, that's an interesting statement. Like, what would be the equivalent on the opposite end, like losing to Toledo like 20-0, or like where it's just this was the last thing you expected. I mean, I think I predicted it. I'm not sure. Actually, I predicted a Wisconsin win. But yes, they did not run it up. Cardale Jones threw 17 passes in that game and completed 12 of them. And I think people remember Cardale Jones as just this gunslinger throwing the ball all over the place in those 3 games. And it's just not the case. Like, he hit some very key passes. Devin Smith was there, obviously, and had his 3 touchdowns in this one, 4 catches, 137 yards, and he was a weird security blanket. Like most security blankets are at the line, they're like at the chains. Like, Cardale Jones' security blanket is 35 yards down the field. You just throw it up and everything will be safe that way. And just this is one of those games where you just start laughing after a while, and everybody's just watching. Like, you can't take your eyes off of it. It becomes this national thing where everybody is just watching this because it's something you don't expect. It's improbable, bordering on impossible if it hadn't happened in front of your eyes. And everything that could go right for the Buckeyes did, and they made that happen. I don't think it just, there's no luck here. Like, they went after it. They had to play this kind of game to make the playoffs, and they went out and did it.
Yeah, here's the drives for Ohio State from the start of the game until basically they pulled the starters at the end of midway through the third quarter. Touchdown, punt, touchdown, field goal, touchdown, touchdown, punt, touchdown, touchdown. I mean, seems pretty remarkable to me. This was also, I got in the car. The first year Ohio State made the Big Ten championship game, I went with a friend of mine. Like, oh, we'll go to the 2013 Big Ten Championship game, Ohio State, Michigan State. What a fun thing. We'll get a hotel. It'll be great. And we went, we watched the game, and we were both so annoyed at the end of the game that we just got in the car and drove home. We didn't even go to the hotel. It's like, screw this. Next year, well, I'm not making that mistake again. So 0 for 2. Good job, me, play on the Big Ten Championship game trips the first couple of years. But yeah, and this went from, they are dead. There's no possible way they're making the college football playoff to then it was like, by the time that game ended, there wasn't really any, outside of Baylor and Texas Christian fans, there was no disagreement. Everyone looked at that and just kind of went, okay, yeah, I mean, you have to let them in. And then, we'll get to what happened after that a little bit later on in the show. But yeah, that was a pretty amazing game. And even though it doesn't strictly fit the definition, the fact that you had this sort of constraint of they have to win by a lot kind of kept that drama around a little bit more. Next one, 2016 Michigan, and this is one. Once again, I was in Texas visiting family for Thanksgiving. I was smart. I booked a later flight this time, so I was like, okay, I'll get to watch this game, and then it goes overtime, and they're like calling my plane, and I'm watching on my phone in the airport in Houston, and going, come on, hurry up! I don't want to get in an airplane not knowing how this game ends. And Curtis Samuel scores a touchdown with like 5 minutes to go before like the final boarding call. So then I knew what happened, and I got on the airplane and I went home. So but this is another one. There's a bunch of these Ohio State Michigan games that have these really exciting endings, and it's like you go back and you watch the first 3 quarters or so, it's like, ugh, this was kind of gross for a long period of time. Like Ohio State, this was you can see the Ohio State offense that gets shut out against Clemson about a month later.
Mm-hmm.
You can see that offense here in this Michigan game for sure.
Yeah, we did a watch along of this the summer of 2020, and you really got a feel for the uptick in quarterback talent, throwing talent that Ohio State had with Dwayne Haskins and Justin Fields, where you see a lot of passes in this game that just aren't complete that should be, that have been completed ever since 2017 and or 2018 and beyond. And this one, Michigan leads 17-7, and really, really concerning. And the only touchdown on for the Buckeyes in the first half was a Malik Hooker interception return, which was normal for that 2016 season. He was one of the best individual performances, maybe the best individual performance in Ohio State football history in terms of a single season defensively. Like, since maybe Chase Young, but he was incredible. Also had an interception called back. I think he went against Indiana, and probably should have had one, I think, against Clemson that year. Just really, really good. JT Barrett, 125 yards rushing in this one, as one might expect. But number 3 versus number 2, and all of the drama, it goes double overtime. Only 330 yards of offense for Ohio State, 310 yards of offense for Michigan. Wilton Spate, this is the best he'd ever been this season. Throws a couple of interceptions, including the one to Malik Hooker that he shouldn't have. But this is another one of those games where I'm down on the field and things get to happen right in front of me, and that goes for the I think the game tying, or in the pass to Amaro Darbo and overtime to tie the game and send it into double overtime. Because you follow the ball when you're on the sideline, and then of course Curtis Samuel happens 8 feet in front of me, and just watching that entire drive, if you want to call the 25 yards a drive, but the first Curtis Samuel play that picks up 9 yards or whatever on the double reverses the field. And then when the fourth, the eventual touchdown play is called, Pat Elflein in the offensive line gets the call and knows that they're going to win because of how Michigan had been playing and defending and how Ohio State was blocking. And so there's some excitement there that they knew that if they just executed, this would win the game. And because Michigan had kicked a field goal in the initial possession of the second overtime, Ohio State just needed that touchdown, and they got it. And then all heck breaks loose. The fans come out of the stands, and I've got to go from the northwest corner to the southeast corner of the Ohio Stadium to get to the eventual post game room, and that was tough going. But it was you're waiting through a bunch of happy people. The amount of just marijuana smoke in my nostrils from one side of the field to the other was immense, and just a bunch of happy people. And then to finally get to towards the corner where I need to be and happen upon Urban Meyer and Son, and then everybody singing Sweet Caroline. Just so many memories from this one. But the drama and the execution at the end, this was everything an Ohio State-Michigan game is supposed to be. And then it went beyond because it went to overtime.
And, there's this really interesting subplot of this game that gets completely forgotten, which was Tyler Durbin, the kicker for Ohio State. Do you know how many field goals he had missed coming into this game all season?
Wasn't he perfect?
He missed, rather famously, did not make a field goal at Penn State. That was it.
Oh,
That was the only one, the blocked field goal against Penn State. That was the only field goal he had missed all season. And then you come into this one, he misses from 37 in the first quarter. He misses. They get down all the way down. 7 minutes left in the game. He get all the way down inside the 5 to kick a tying field goal. Misses. 7 minutes left. 21-yard field goal he missed. So then you get to the end of the game, last play of the game, 1 second left. They line him up, and it's like, man, this guy is going to be like the way people from the 70s remember Mike Lantry. Like, you don't want to be that dude, the dude who missed the field goal for the to win the Ohio State-Michigan game, or in this case, prolong the Ohio State-Michigan game. And he didn't. He drilled it 23-yarder. So, yeah, that's one of those like little forgotten moments in there. But yeah, he was very nearly a GOAT and ended up kind of saving the day at the very end for Ohio State. So that was. But yeah, and then the drama after the game of the did he make it? Didn't he make it? I mean, that's you still see people arguing about that. So, and I think the consensus ended up being he made it, but he made it by like that much. And if A.J. Alexander's butt had been a little bigger, he wouldn't have made it, because J.T. Barrett basically face planted into A.J. Alexander's butt, but did apparently get across that line by just enough. And I mean, you look at the replay, it's like I don't know how you could have overturned that. Like if it is inconclusive, like whatever the call on the field was going to be is going to stand. So that's not one that I think you're going to get a lot of argument about. Next one. 2014 Alabama. This is one that I'm adding this one to the list because obviously this was going to be on the list and this is going to be very high on the list. I just legitimately just forgot it. I just didn't have it on there. Like I thought I'm going to have to put that on there. And just as I was putting it together, I didn't put it on there because I'm an idiot. So now it's here. So hooray. I saved the day. I mean, this is the follow-up to the Wisconsin game. This is very much, to me, this is the 1980 USA hockey win over the Soviets. Not that the Alabama was as unbeatable as the Soviets were, but everyone remembers this game, and it's like, oh yeah, well they had to win another game after that to win the gold medal, and they had to win another game after this to win the national championship. But really, this was the national championship game, and stop me if you've heard this before. Ohio State has a bunch of chances to get on the board early and ends up kicking a bunch of field goals and then falls way behind, and it's 21-6 Alabama. It's 21-6 Alabama with 3 minutes left in the first half. And it was, you had all the Southern gumps out there talking about how, you knew this was going to happen, another Northern yada, yada, yada. And then Ezekiel Elliott scores a touchdown, 21-13. Michael Thomas on that great end-around pass from Evan Spencer makes that incredible catch. All of a sudden, that's 12 seconds left in the first half. All of a sudden, it's 21-20, and it's like, oh, this is a whole new ball game. And then the second half, Devin Smith, long touchdown pass from Cardale Jones. Steve Miller, the interception return. It's 34-21. Alabama answers. Ezekiel Elliott answers with that famous 85-yard touchdown run. And then just because nothing's allowed to come easy, Alabama scores a touchdown. Alabama, I was just thinking I should have gone back and checked the stats. At the end of the game, Ohio State had some really stupid play call where they were throwing the ball with they're throwing the ball with it was the first play of the next the drive where After Ohio State recovers the onside kick, there's a minute 57 left. And Cardale Jones throws the ball to Evan Spencer. It's like, what are you doing? What? And did incomplete. And it's one of those like, well, if you do it, it's holy Buckeye, and you're a genius, but you didn't, so therefore it's a terrible call. Alabama got the ball back with a minute 33 left. Goes starts at their own 18, gets down to the 42-yard line of Ohio State, and then Tyvis Powell picks off. Tyvis Powell, the latter-day Will Allen. When in doubt, who saved the day? Well, if it's the 2000s, it's Will Allen. If it's the 2010s, it's Tyvis Powell saving the day at the end of the game, and then doesn't get down quite as fast as Ohio State's coaching staff and Ohio State fans were probably hoping, but does eventually get down, and they win 42-35.
This one for me was surprising in how much Ohio State beat up on Alabama. And you had Cardale Jones running the ball, debacling Landon Collins, injuring Landon Collins, and maybe injuring Reggie Ragland as well. And afterwards, somebody from Alabama, maybe it was Reggie Ragland, talking about the cheap shots that Ohio State was taking by having Cardale Jones run over people,
by having the other team's quarterback run over your defense.
That's not fair. So some other stuff I like from this one: Ohio State 10 of 18 on third downs, Alabama 2 of 13. But Alabama was 4 of 4 in touchdowns and red zones. Ohio State just 2 of 4, as you said, with the field goals. Derrick Henry not getting the ball as much, and people credit Lane Kiffin a little bit for Ohio State's win because they went away from him. Derrick Henry, 13 carries, 95 yards, rushing in this one, averaging 7 yards a carry, had a 25-yarder early in the game. But this is another one where you just give the ball to Ezekiel Elliott, and eventually good things happen, and that they just... This was when he wasn't good enough to be all Big Ten, Tom. But after these 3 games, he was good enough to win the Sullivan Award as America's top amateur athlete.
Sometimes I think awards voting might not be incredibly consistent. And as someone who was just tasked with putting this list together, I can kind of sympathize. I get it. Like, yeah.
You've become your own worst enemy.
I have indeed. But yes, Derrick Henry averaging 7.3 yards per carry. How many carries did he get? 13. Great job. You want to put what you want to do, Lane Kiffin, is put the game in Blake Sims' hands. That's how you want to play this one. Absolutely.
And how far has Alabama come since the times when they were okay just winning with defense and mediocre quarterbacking? That's long
this
gone now.
This is towards the end of the crappy Alabama quarterback era, where Saban was happy to play defense and try and win the national championship game against LSU 21-0 by not letting LSU cross midfield. Like, and you hear 21-0, it's like, oh, they must have scored 2 or 3 touchdowns. Nope, just a bunch of field goals. I think they kicked 5 field goals in that game, something like that. It's just like this is kind of the end of that trash panda Alabama quarterback era, and then you sort of started to see them kind of develop and turn into better players, better passers not long after this. So yeah, this was and this is a game that Lane Kiffin did not win himself didn't do himself any favors in Nick Saban's estimation with the play calling in this game. So yeah, that was you have seen Ohio State play callers not have great games. This was an opposing play caller not having a good game. So next one, this is we're down to number two. Number 2, the 2006 Ohio State Michigan game. This is we talked about the build up and the emotions around the 2014 Wisconsin game and some of the stuff that went into that. There will never be a game that has the build up of the week that this week did. Not a chance. Never. Number 2, Michigan. Number 1, Ohio State. Widely considered by far and away the 2 best teams in the country. Both 11-0. You have all the drama around the week. And then on Friday, Bo Schembechler dies. That was like this shocking twist at the end of this week, where all the hype has been around this game pretty much all season. Everyone's been pointing to this game as like, oh man, just wait. Oh man, just wait. And then the day before the game, the greatest coach in Michigan history dies. It was a bizarre and surreal atmosphere. They did a moment of silence inside the stadium before the game, and it was just a very strange atmosphere. It was a 3:30 kickoff, which is very rare for Ohio State, Michigan. So it ends at night. It was, and this is one heck of a football game. And it ended up 42-39, and really it wasn't quite ever that close. Michigan never actually had the ball, I don't believe, with a chance to tie or win at any point in the last quarter. So, I mean, it was, it ended up close. But Ohio State, this was a very rare Ohio State game where like the offense was like this. Ohio State won this one with its offense. This was not the traditional Jim Tressel win it with defense kind of team.
Yeah, and I think maybe the best part about this one is it was historic. It was a 3-point win for Ohio State. But once Ohio State got the lead, there was always drama, but it was always there was some comfort there. And so you got to enjoy Ohio State, this great game, with a little bit of comfort. One play isn't going to cost you the game because Ohio State is either leading by 7 or leading by 14. So you're able to enjoy it rather than just being like all tensed up. So it's one of the rare games where you can enjoy it as it's going on, because otherwise you're too terrified to even breathe or I can't move. Last time I moved, Ohio State punted. I got to stay right here because they scored a touchdown on the last drive. This just allowed people to, I think, enjoy the game more than normally they could, because normally you can't. You can't enjoy it until after it's over when it's this close. And really, like you said, Michigan never had the ball in an opportunity to take the lead after a certain point, and Michigan opens up 7-0, goes right down the field, 80 yards, 7 plays, and takes the lead, and then Ohio State eventually tie it, and from there they just always had a little bit of distance, and were always able to just be cool, and the not that there wasn't pressure, but just there's a little bit of comfort, and then plays just kept being made. And the Beanie Wells 52-yarder, I remember thinking this is the greatest run in Ohio State football history, because he should have been tackled in the backfield, does a 360 spin out of it, and just goes. And that gave them the 14-7 lead. Not long after that, the Ted Ginn lined up at tight end with the play action. Was that on 4th down? I don't know.
No, that was like 2nd and 1, I think.
Yeah. That's the time when you throw deep, the 2nd and 1. And Michigan fought back, but this was Troy Smith, and he was the Wolverine Slayer. 29 of 41, 316 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Didn't run the ball much in this game because he didn't run the ball much in 2006. He was a thrower, and they didn't need to. And it was just spread and shred with Roy Hall, Ted Ginn, Brian Robisky, Gonzo. Brian Hartline almost opened the game with a touchdown catch, if I recall. Got tackled on something that could have gone the distance. Tom, is my memory correct? I want to see. Yeah, he had well, maybe not. But anyway, I remember a lot of stuff pretty well.
Some of it happened.
Brian Hartline, I think, almost had a touchdown, maybe at some point in this game. Anyway, go on, Tom.
Yeah, and I went back and looked, and from the middle of the 3rd quarter on, when Antonio Pittman had that long touchdown run to make it 35-24, Michigan did score. They got it to 35-31, and they did have the ball once in the 4th quarter, with down only 4 points, but they went 3 and out. So I mean, it never felt like they were really, like you said, completely. It was tense, but it wasn't, heart explodingly tense. And but it ended up, they scored a touchdown with about 2.5 minutes left, and then tried an onside kick. Ohio State recovers, and that was it. So yeah, it was, Ohio State had to pick up 1 first down, and they did. So yeah, it was it was a really, really memorable game. Again, this is one that lived up to the hype. And, you looking back now, I mean, you got to remember, after this game, the conversation around this was, should these two teams play as a rematch in the national championship game? And that was like a legitimate possibility that these two teams were going to be the BCS national title game. Because again, there's no Big Ten championship game, so this is it. They win. Ohio State wins. They're 12-0. Michigan's 11-1. It was a legitimate possibility that those two teams were going to play for a national championship again. And how different is the narrative around the Big Ten if these two teams play for the national championship out in Arizona? And no matter who wins, if Michigan wins, it's these two juggernauts played, had these two incredible games. And if Ohio State wins, it's wow. If it's a close game, it's wow. Another great game, and Ohio State wins again, is validated the national championship. Instead, Michigan goes to the Rose Bowl and gets killed by USC. Ohio State goes to Arizona to go play Florida. I don't remember how that game ended. And then, and that changes the narrative around the Big Ten quite a bit for pretty much the rest of the decade. So,
and whenever we talk about this game, you have to bring up the fact that HBO had been planning a documentary about the game, and of all the games to and situations to have a film crew around, like, you couldn't have imagined a more compelling, more dramatic, because this could have been a 42-7 or something like that, where it could have been a dud, and it sure wasn't. And then, of course, that documentary aired about a year later, prior to Michigan week, if I recall. I don't recall correctly.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And then last one is the 2003 Fiesta Bowl, Ohio State, Miami. This is one where Miami was favored by 13? It was like just shy of 2 touchdowns, I think, 11, 13 points, something like that. And, you had people saying that was like a laughably low line. This Ohio State team had no business on the field with Miami, because Miami was on a 34-game win streak at this point. They were this unbeatable juggernaut, just incredible talent all around the field. And here's little old Ohio State, who's just barely crapping out wins against Purdue and Illinois and Michigan and Cincinnati, just barely squeaking by Penn State. I mean, like, the whole half the season was, oh boy, that was a terrible game, but they just barely won, so okay. And here comes Ohio State, and this is a little bit like that Alabama game where Miami had not gotten punched in the mouth the way that Ohio State punched them in the mouth. Like, they had not gotten bullied the way that Ohio State bullied them, and really controlled the line of scrimmage. But the same thing. Miami goes down the field, scores a touchdown in the first quarter, and it's like, man, is Ohio State going to get run out of the building? But then defense held. They held Miami to 7 points into late in the third quarter. This game was 7-0 Miami with 3 minutes left in the first half. I think again, like, this is one of those where everyone remembers the end, but there's a lot of before that was very dramatic in this game. This unstoppable Miami offense, 2.0 yards per rush, 4.8 yards per play. I mean, 4.8 yards per play, they outgained Ohio State by more than a yard per play, but Ohio State dragged them into their kind of game. This was just a street fight of a football game, and that was what Ohio State needed to win, and that's what they got.
I'm just seeing this now, and I assume I knew this before. Tom, do you know the longest scoring drive of the game for the Buckeyes?
I don't off the top of my head, but oh boy, yeah, I'm looking right now.
It would have been one of the 2 overtime touchdowns.
Yeah, touchdown of 17 yards, touchdown of 14 yards, field goal of 1 yard, touchdown of 25, touchdown of 25.
That's crazy. But this was after the game. This was declared by so many people the best college football game of all time, and I think it stayed that way until USC and Texas in the 2006 Rose Bowl, and for good reason. And the inability of Maurice Clarett to run the ball surprised me. Craig Krenzel became the runner, 19 carries, 81 yards. Some of those are sacks, but Jim Tressel used him to run the ball. The tone that the defensive line for Ohio State set in this game, we talked a few shows ago about how the 2009 USC game, Ohio State was playing scared. Ohio State was not playing scared in this one. I don't think they had any doubts that they were going to be able to do what they did. And I had no doubts either, Tom. We had a whiteboard in our kitchen, I had a prediction up there. I had Ohio State winning this game. Something like 28-24, 28-21, something to that effect. And I was 31-28 maybe is exactly what I had. And Tom, I was very close. I was correct, not with the entire score, but you just, after enough time, Tom, you watch what this 2002 Ohio State team does. They make enough plays on offense because they do have skill on offense. They have this defense that has this defensive line that comes from all different places. Linebackers that are very good. Matt Wilhelm, All-American. Mike Doss, always making plays in this one. And yet, you're still holding on for dear life. Like, when the ball is thrown to Roscoe Parrish, you're like, oh, God. When the ball is thrown to Andre Johnson, you're like, oh, please, Chris Gamble. And Kellen Winslow, Willis McGahee, you've said it in many shows now, Tom. Will Allen, a game saver, taking out Willis McGahee may have been another one of those.
Yeah, that was one of the more gruesome injuries you've seen on the field. That was a bad one. But, I mean, all the attention on this game ends up being on the call in overtime, which, if Terry Porter throws that flag as soon as he sees the penalty instead of waiting 2 seconds, I think that penalty is a lot less notable in college football history. And the NCAA officiating, yada, 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 came out after and said, yes, it was the correct call. It was the correct call. But, what gets lost in that is if Ohio State, if they had correctly called either, number one, the defensive hold on a Chris Gamble ran an out route with like 2 minutes left in the game, give or take, if they had called either, number one, the defensive hold on that play, or the fact that Chris Gamble caught the ball in bounds, either one of those would have given Ohio State a first down and let them pretty much run out the clock in overtime and then in regulation, and then Ohio State wins the game 17-14, and no one knows Terry Porter's name. So there were a few memorable calls in that one. I wrote an article right after the game with like 23 or something like that calls that were like really obvious, like major game-changing calls that went against Ohio State that Miami fans took with all the grace that you would expect in such a situation. So yeah, that was a fun one. But yeah, this is one that they went 34 years without winning a national championship. And you think back, everyone was talking just now about how Georgia had gone 42 years, and it's like, I mean, once you get past a certain point, like it is a long time. You have generations who have not seen their team win the national championship. Ohio State had gotten close a couple times in the interim there, but hadn't ever gotten over the hump. And then they finally get over the hump in this really surprising, shocking upset against an all-time great team. And, we've talked about this before, probably broke the Miami football program. Like that is the game that kind of broke the mystique around Miami football. And then now it's just, we have to have more swagger, and we have to have, they have never gotten close to being back to the level that they were when this game kicked off.
That penalty, the crazy thing about it is it took long enough for me to watch and process, well, this Ohio State is just not allowed to win a national championship. Like this just does not happen to Ohio State. And you allow yourself to just sink in, and then you see the flag, you're like, whoa, hold on a second. And then everything happens from there. But this was an incredible game to watch, to experience, to see the culmination of without a doubt, the most insane season in terms of just how many times Ohio State could have lost, and yet they didn't. And this was just the culmination of every close game they had before against teams that they shouldn't have been close with. And then it's just kind of an example of playing to the level of your competition when they could have been playing to this level the entire time, except Craig Krenzel was not a great quarterback. He was 7 of 21 throwing the ball in this one. But this was I don't know. Can you win a national championship with a quarterback going 7 of 21 now and rushing the ball for 80 yards? Maybe, but you better have a really, really good defense.
Yeah, this was a game where you look at the numbers. Yeah, 7 for 21, 122 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 picks. That's if I told you
MVP.
Yeah, if I told you, won the MVP with that line, because Craig Krenzel, also the leading rusher for either team in this game. I mean, like, none of this makes sense. And yeah, Maurice Clarett, 23 carries, 47 yards, 2 yards per carry for Maurice Clarett, but those 2 touchdowns. And then he also had maybe one of the biggest plays of the game with that interception from Krenzel. Got picked off by Sean Taylor, and then Clarett goes and wrestles the ball away from Sean Taylor to give him the ball back. I mean, just completely insane plays. And you look now, and back then it was, the scrappy underdog Ohio State team against this mighty NFL machine from Miami. And then you look back and it's like, oh, pretty much every starter on that Ohio State team also played in the NFL. So this was just 2 like incredibly talented teams, one of whom just had the limiter on their offense all year with Jim Tressel calling plays, but it ended up working. So you can't really criticize them. It all worked out in the end.
And then Tom, your final game on the list, the 2020 Alabama game,
2018 Purdue. Please, Tony, come on. No. Yeah, no, that's it. We're out of games. The national championship win over Miami is the last one. No matter how much Tony wants to end on another down note, sorry, we are done. We have made it through the countdown. We may do a show where Tony tells me, here's all the games you missed, because there were a bunch that were, as I look back, it's like, yeah, this should have been a top 40 at least, and maybe a top 50, because there are some great games that we didn't talk about on this one.
I just don't know how we thought we would get through all 12 of these games in one show.
This was almost 3 shows worth of show length between them. So turns out when there's an exciting football game, there's a lot to talk about. Who knew?
There is. So that will do it for Tom's list of the 30 most exciting Ohio State football games of the 2000s. How do you feel about it? Feel free to give Tom some feedback. If it's negative, you can give it to me, and then I will give it to Tom. I can hide your identity and just present it as if it was mine. I have no problem doing that. That's something I enjoy doing. Sometimes I just take random criticisms from one person to another, and I take it and apply it to Tom. So if you want to go ahead and do that, feel free. But thank you guys for listening. As always, you can check out the number of different shows on this network. You got Kevin Noon with the Big Me Kickoff. You got Mark Givler and Bill Green with the Gives in the Bank podcast. You've got Alex's Around the Oval podcast. Tom, Morning Scoop every day. Any others, Tom? Is that?
No, you got, right? Yeah, Kevin, Alex, Gives in the Bank, and me. Yep, we're good.
Cool. Perfect. And also, there's this one, Buckeye Weekly Podcast, which you can watch or you can listen, or you can do both. You can have the podcast in your ears while you're watching on YouTube. That way, you can have us in stereo. Now, you got to time up the ads, which can be a little difficult, but worth the while.
Also, try and time this podcast up with Dark Side of the Moon. If you hit play right when Tony says, "How's it going?" it'll sync up really magically.
I don't know if that's true, but
only one way to find out.
Only one way to find out. There you go. Perfect. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll talk to you later.